And get started here. So, good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to those of you joining us from the West Coast. Thank you for everyone attending today's webinar. As you know, my name is Victoria Thacker, and I will be your host today. This webinar is brought to you by the Chartered Governance Institute of Canada, specifically the Quebec branch. We are the only global qualifying organization in Canada where you can become a chartered governance professional. For further information about our programs, webinars, or events, I invite you, as always, to visit our website at www.cgiofcanada.ca. Before we begin the presentation, please note that everyone has been muted, but if you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A function, the chat, or you can also raise your hand and we can have questions that way as well, and I'll flag them for our speaker. It is my pleasure to introduce our esteemed speaker, Jonathan Moyal. He will be diving into Nonflict, the Art of Everyday Peacemaking. Jonathan is an accomplished leader who bridges the worlds of business, arts, and community impact. With over a decade of senior experience in fundraising and strategic development for renowned institutions like the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts and the Orchestre Symphonique de Montréal, he now serves as executive director of Million Peacemakers, a global nonprofit dedicated to transforming conflict through practical dialogue. He's passionate about building meaningful connections. Jonathan also shares his expertise as a lecturer at McGill University and as president of the board of POP Montreal, empowering people and organizations to create lasting change. So with all of that, please join me in welcoming Jonathan Moyle.
Thanks, Victoria. Thrilled to be here with all of you in the faceless crowd out there. It's strange for me. I usually get to interact and see you, so feel free to use the chat and interrupt me, and I'll try to be as interactive back as I can. Really happy to be here and to share a little bit in a very, very brief taste of what Nonflict is, the art of everyday peacemaking. I've been involved in this work for almost 10 years, maybe even more. I joined the board of Million Peacemakers about 10 years ago and was a proud board member for many years before stepping in as our executive director. And I'll be able to share a little bit about our history and what brings us here, and hopefully some tools that you can bring into your governance work. And as Victoria mentioned, I've also been a board member of other organizations, including currently serving as the president of Pop Montreal, which is a festival, 25-year-old festival here in Montreal that happens in September. So I've worn the different hats and seen governance from different lenses, and I'll be happy to share a little bit about that with you all today. So without further ado, let's dive into Nonflict. So Nonflict is a simple but powerful three-step process that was created in 2012 by Dr. Amir Kafir, an expert in conflict resolution, and Stephen Hecht, a business person who was very involved with the YPO network and still is, and still acts as the chair of our board and our chief executive peacemaker. Long story short, they developed this for the YPO network in 2012, and the impact was so palpable and so needed that Steve decided to retire from his career in real estate and business and start Million Peacemakers. Since then, in the first 9 years of our existence, we basically did this with groups like yourselves in corporate settings, training teams from all over the world, and we trained in that first 9 years about 250, 260,000 people around the world, mostly through some great partnerships and some great collaborations. About 2 years ago, our board set out a new mission and said, the need for conflict resolution and for peacemaking is too important right now, and especially young people need this more than ever. So how do we were already giving it away for free to organizations around the world, but how do we, rather than getting paid to do it and then giving it away for free, how do we do the thing that we really want to do, is to share it with young people around the world? So we set out on a new goal of training 250 million young people from around the world in this methodology. And why 250 million? It's that we're inspired by research by Dr. Erica Chenoweth from Harvard University, who, through research on 100 years of peaceful protest and of nonviolent movements, has discovered two things. One is that peaceful movements outperform violent movements 2 to 1, contrary to what the media often shares with us. And number two is that the tipping point for change in a community is far, far lower than what we would initially guess. And that 3.5% of a community that is actively working towards peaceful coexistence is not only transformative, but virtually unstoppable. So we were pretty inspired as an organization by that, and decided that, well, somebody quite analytical on our board said, well, 3.5% of the world's population is 250 million. If we could transform the conflict resolution skills of 250 million, let's say young people, because they're easier to transform, then we could be an unstoppable force for peace. And then somebody else said, well, um, there happened to be there happens to be an association of 6 of the largest youth organizations around the world, and they happen to represent, you guessed it, 250 million young people. And so we set out to work with them. And so, like I said, 9 years, 250,000 people trained, mostly through Train the Trainer and in-person or online workshops. We needed to do things differently. And so in our 10th year, we trained over 2.5 million young people across mostly the US, through partnerships with school boards and even with the prison system, where we have 500,000 tablets in the hands of incarcerated and formerly incarcerated women, primarily across the US, that are using conflict resolution skills to re-enter the workforce in a positive way. So all that brings us to where we are today, which is, what is Nonflict? And so for those of you who have trained in nonviolent communication or conflict resolution or any of the skills that are listed on the screen, this will be very familiar to you. We haven't reinvented the wheel. We've simply made it simple and accessible for individuals of all walks of life to be able to take this into their lives and transform their relationship with conflict, which, spoiler alert, I don't have the remedy for how to get rid of conflict, nor do we really want to. The question is, can we transform how we relate to it and make it a positive force rather than a negative force in our lives? So, just a little bit about where this work has taken us. In 2019, we were invited to the Vatican twice to work with the College of Cardinals on the role of religious institutions and religious leaders in peacemaking. And just a fun fact, 70 to 75% of the world's youth are educated in schools run by religious institutions. So you can imagine that ignoring the role of and the power of religious leaders and those educational institutions would be a real shame, because we'd be missing out on most of the impact. And so we don't tend to work with governments, but we do work with any peace-loving institutions that are looking to share this around the world. In the center, you'll see our founder, Steve, in Rwanda, where we were 4 times last year during events surrounding the 30th anniversary of the genocide against the Tutsis in 1994. That inspired us to our initial goal of training 1 million youth in 2024, which was a prompt from our partners in Kigali, who told us that if the world could get together and kill 1 million people in 100 days, then surely we can train 1 million young people in their honor. And so that was our initial inspiration. And thankfully, we surpassed that goal and trained 2.5 million in 2024. And now we're on to our next goal of 250 million. So let's so this is just a little bit about that global partnership that we built with the big 6 youth organizations. Those big 6, for those who are interested, are the World YMCA, the World YWCA, the Girl Scouts and the World Scouts movement, the Duke of Edinburgh Trust, and the International Red Cross. So all of those great partners, as well as our friends at Junior Achievement Global at the bottom, have all come together as this network that reaches 270 million young people around the world to say, yes, 2026 has to be the year of peace. And we want to infuse all of our educational programming with what Nonflict has to offer as a tool to make peacemaking simple and accessible in their communities. So now I'll stop talking for a moment, and I want you to think about conflict. Think about a specific conflict that you may be having. That could be at work, could be at home, and I want you to visualize the both the facts and the feelings that surround that conflict. You can close your eyes if it helps, and really get yourself into that mindset of where you are in that conflict. Take a moment to think about it. And as you're thinking about it, really think about those feelings that conflict brings up for you, that conflict in particular and conflict in general. And when you're ready, using the wheel that you can see in front of you, um, try to identify the most specific emotion or emotions that you associate with conflict. And think about those. You can jot them down in front of you if you'd like. And in a moment, we'll be getting you to join at Slido, where we'll be using Slido for two different polls just to get an idea of those faceless names out there and how you feel about conflict. So grab this QR code, and I think Victoria shared the link in the chat as well. Um, and in a moment, there you go. Please share with me, how does conflict make you feel? So again, that specific conflict or conflict in general, when you think about it and you think about those emotions, go ahead and jot down as many of them that come up when you think about conflict. Tense, anxious, uneasy, frustrated, upset. All right, anxious and frustrated are popping up a lot there. So a lot of negativity. Now, uh, don't be shy if you have positive emotions that come up for conflict as well. We usually have our lawyer types or even our HR folks that are very comfortable in conflict, so that's okay too. But I won't be surprised to see a lot of that anxiety, frustration, and unease come up. A little bit of sadness, surprise. Yeah, that's always one that comes up, which is, I guess, neither positive nor negative in and of itself. Disrespectful or disrespected. Yeah, that's a big one. We'll talk about that in a moment. So I'll give another 10 seconds or so. Thank you all for sharing. So as you see, the bigger ones are the ones that come up more often. So just for those who have never used Slido. So that frustration, that anxiety, and that unease is definitely prevalent. Thanks for sharing, everybody. So as you see, our relationship with conflict tends to be fraught with negativity. And that's no surprise. And I don't think I've ever had a group that has had overwhelming positivity associated with conflict. So again, we're not looking to get rid of conflict in and of itself. However, we do want to transform or at least start to modify our relationship with conflict. So I want you to think about, how would you define conflict in a word or two, or a short sentence? And on that same link where you are, let's say an alien was landing on Earth and had never known conflict. All right, so conflict is a disagreement. How else could we define conflict? A difference in belief or opinion. Thank you. A miscommunication. Difference in beliefs again. a misalignment. All right. Being unable to come to the same conclusion. I like that. Disagreement that may escalate unnecessarily, right, to lead to hurt feelings. Two opposing opinions and beliefs, or disagreement. So lots of disagreement, misalignment, and no meeting of the minds. So minds that are not meeting at the same place. Give another 10 seconds or so. A strong disagreement, usually associated with tempers raised, right? So conflict for many is defined as anger and elevation of emotions. Sometimes it's necessary to get through conflict for agreement. Okay, great. Avoiding to share thoughts, opposing points of views. Thank you. Okay, thank you for all this. So, for the purpose of the next 40 minutes or so, let's define conflict as simply two or more perspectives that are coming into contact with each other. So, as you can see, and as you can see from the glass being neither half full nor half empty, but both, and neither, um, the conflict in and of itself is neither positive nor negative. Our relationship to it may be positive or negative, but in and of itself, two or more perspectives coming into contact with each other that are different is not a negative thing. In fact, conflict can lead to change and growth and innovation. It certainly has, in most cases, led to those things. Um, but we may have past experiences that tend to color that. And really importantly is that, we heard the word disagreement and certainly disrespect earlier. And that leads to probably 90% of conflicts out there, right? Wars are, I would say, have raged, but wars are currently raging based on disrespect. Leaders go to war over disrespect, whether that's in the boardroom or on the battlefield. What we're trying to establish here is a way where we don't go out with the objective of convincing the other of our opinion, which again is usually a losing battle. It's certainly a losing battle in the comments section of social media, but it even in the real world. What if we're trying to establish that we're right and somebody else is wrong? We're starting out having lost already. What we're trying to figure out through Nonflict is how two seemingly opposing truths, and truth, plural, is often a difficult one to absorb, but two opposing truths can coexist without trying to convince the other that one is right and one is wrong, that one has a belief that should not be shared or values that don't belong. And that may be difficult, but that's what we're trying to establish today. And why? Why are we trying to establish that? Because let's define what we're trying to eradicate is destructive conflict, right? Conflict that leads to destructive ends, not conflict in and of itself. Destructive conflict, at least 85% of employees experience conflict at work that is destructive. It impacts productivity, it impacts our effectiveness at work, our team morale, and at least 1 in 4 employees are avoiding work because of conflict that they have at work, right? So we established that 7 to 10% of a company's payroll is being lost to destructive conflict. So investing in the relationship that we have with conflict as a team can actually have a very significant bottom line impact. So what is the Nonflict way? And we're diving right into it. Normally, before we do this, we actually establish one key function of the Nonflict way, which is what we see in step one, and will be reminiscent or familiar to many people who have looked at active listening as a skill. And so step one is based on active listening. What's really important about the Nonflict way, two things before we start. One is that it's a respectful and participatory process. So you can't force this on somebody. You can't, you won't get to the ends that you're looking to get. However, you can do this with a willing partner who is not part of this conflict. So in our experience over the last 10 years, about 85% of conflicts can be resolved without the other person even being in the room with you, just from seeing things from the other person's perspective. And what we do is that the other person, a friendly participant, would play the role of the other person. So whether you have the person you're in conflict with or not in the room with you, you start with step one. And really importantly, you don't move on to step two or three unless step one feels absolutely complete. And if all that you do is spend your time on step one for that time and revisit step two and three later, that is fine too. But don't rush it. Um, and by the way, I'll be sharing a whole bunch of tools and skills that you can take home with you and practice, 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 so that you can bring this into your everyday life because practice does make perfect in this, especially with repeated interactions with the same person that you are in a relationship with, whether that's a work relationship or a personal relationship. So, step one. In step one, we seek to understand ourselves and our partners. So, one partner, so the person that you and the person that you're in conflict with, or a person who is playing the role of that person, we share our view of the conflict, and the other person mirrors. And by mirroring, they mirror back the essence of what they've heard. So not parroting back the words specifically that they've heard, but what were the underlying messages? What were the feelings and emotions that they were hearing in between the lines? How do you make the other person really feel heard and understood? So we start with what is the conflict, right? Describing that conflict. So, and we can go through this with some of the tools a little bit later, uh, especially if we have time. So, what is the conflict? So, describing the facts around the conflict, because our facts may be different than somebody else's facts, but we want to see it from each person's perspective. So, what is the conflict and how does it make me feel? What are the emotions that I associate with it? Right. So, I've been feeling disrespected at work because anytime I raise my hand to speak, it's never the right time. It makes me feel less important than the others. It makes me feel unworthy of my job. What's important to me is that I feel like I'm part of a team that values my opinion, that values my role in and my contribution. And the other person listens, mirrors back the essence of what they've heard, and then asks, "Did I understand you well?" And importantly, is there anything else? Because if we've done our job well and opened up those lines of communication, then there's always something else. And in the case of that person being disrespected at work, well, actually, there is something else. 2 weeks ago, when we were, out for a company lunch, um, you made that joke at my expense, and you may have thought it was funny, but I actually really didn't appreciate it. But you never would have said that, right? You would have either let it slide or let it fester if you hadn't felt respected and listened to. But as soon as you do feel respected, first of all, through active listening, we actually see a physical change in people who have been listened to. You see shoulders relaxing. You see a sense of ease returning to their face. As soon as you see that, you know that you're speaking to almost an entirely different person than you've been speaking to before. The act, and again, if we had time to actually go through active listening today, I would pair you up ideally with somebody who you haven't spoken to. And you can try this at home, whether it's with a loved one or somebody you haven't seen in a while, listening to them actively about something that is really important to them. So normally when we do this, we ask them to share a person or an event that had a major impact on their lives. And they would share that and then watch somebody mirror back. And they come back to the room um, really having been transformed and almost feeling like they met somebody a new, I wouldn't use the word soulmate, but certainly a soul connection, right? Somebody who you've connected with on a deep level. And that can be really transformative. And often the word that we hear is that I've been given a gift, right? Either the gift of listening or being listened to. And we realize that of all the gifts we have readily available to us to share with others, this is one of the most valuable, and we can give it away freely and at any moment, but we don't take the time to do so. So imagine being in a work setting and walking into your supervisor's office and saying, I have something really important to talk to you about. And them, for example, taking a moment to take their phone and put it in a drawer. or turn it off completely, right? Just that act of total abandon to the conversation, knowing that that's important, can be transformative. So that's what we're trying to establish in step one. Reestablish mutual respect, reestablish or disarm a power dynamic that previously was there. Because when both people get to speak uninterruptedly and are heard in an equal way, then we can shed a lot of the relationships or the uneven parts of our relationship that we may have had. That could be between a parent and a child, between a supervisor and an employee, whatever that is. It reestablishes trust and reestablishes mutual respect. So that's step one. Step two, once we've understood ourselves and our partners and felt like we really shared in an exhaustive way and asked the questions in a way that everybody felt heard, then we move on to understanding our shared reality. In that, we discuss together these two perspectives. How do they fit together, and how are they maybe contributing to our underlying conflict? So, not the symptoms that we're feeling, but what is really going on behind the scenes? What's leading to the conflict, right? So, it may be that I'm not getting enough FaceTime with one of my colleagues, but is the conflict actually that we have very different styles, that we have different times where we work well? It could be a time zone issue. It could be that we're dealing with something at home. Whatever that is, there's something that's leading to our underlying conflict. But what's important is also talking about what's working well for us. Why are we even investing time? Because there's no question that this process is a time investment, right? It doesn't it doesn't just flow quickly. You need to set aside other priorities and put this as a main priority. And we're doing that because some things are working well for us. Well, I love coming to work. I love being part of this team. This work is really fulfilling to me. It really aligns with my passions and my vision for the world. I want to feel like I'm a helpful part of this team. I want to be at home and think, oh, I can't wait to go back and do this work. Um, we talk about those things so that we know what we're working for. But we also talk about, and this is because about 50% of people, so most people are not necessarily motivated to change, right? Change is difficult. It's often a physical and grueling endeavor. And so to be motivated for change, we need prompts that really move us in a direction that we care about. About 50% of people we've seen are motivated by things getting much, much worse. If they can visualize a worst case scenario, now visualizing our facts and our feelings associated to that, that makes our situation much, much worse, those people, those 50%, will be motivated to make a transformative change, to actually work towards making things better. They identify that things could get really worse, right? So if we're talking about a workplace environment, we might be thinking, okay, you know what? I'm clocking in and clocking out. Work is fine. I go home and my home life is great. And so I just have to walk in and walk out and not think about it. But if we start thinking about toxicity seeping into the other areas of our work, then we start thinking about coming home miserable, taking that out on our loved ones, not wanting to wake up in the morning, having physical and emotional impact from those things. All of a sudden, we can be motivated to really put a stop to those negative impacts and try to make a positive change. So that's step two. In step three, we address the other 50% of people who are motivated by a best case scenario. They may not care if things could get worse or even trust that things might get worse, but they're motivated by an ideal reality. They're motivated by things getting so much better that they feel fulfilling and impactful in a way that really resonates with them. And they want to move towards that. So they see that end goal, and all of a sudden, the present is no longer something they want to be part of. They want a new reality. And so in step three, we as a team, we as a partnership co-create that ideal reality, an ideal reality that encompasses both of our shared realities, both of our perspectives on the scenario. And so we visualize that best case scenario, right? Our team working at its peak, really bringing out the best in everybody, right? If it's a personal relationship, a relationship where we're no longer just dialing it in, right? But where we really see and identify the best in each other and we bring that out. And we feel good and we look forward to spending time together, whether that's again a personal or work relationship, that would feel great, right? What are the feelings associated with that? I would feel fulfilled. I would feel happier. I would feel relieved, right? All of those feelings that certainly didn't pop up when we spoke about conflict earlier. Um, but the conflict is still there. These people haven't changed fundamentally. They still disagree, but they don't disagree in a way that devalues the other or disrespects the other. They disagree in ways where they can bring those disagreements into a better reality. Now, that ideal reality may still have obstacles between us and them. And we may have to face those obstacles. Some of them are can be overcome, and some of them are really not in our control. For our purposes, we set aside the ones that are not in our control. We can't control the amount of time that we have. We can't control other people and how they feel about us. But we can control our behavior, our perspective on the situation. We can control how much time we allocate to things and prioritize in certain ways. We establish in step three all of those obstacles that we can overcome, and we establish an action plan on who will do what and when towards achieving that ideal reality. Simple enough, right? Um, it's easier said than done. And the truth is that we've learned a lot through this process. It may seem robotic, it may seem unnatural at times, and that's normal. Behavior change is grueling physically. Change is difficult for people, but having a step-by-step process that we can all follow is rewarding and transformative. And I've learned this in the simplest way from our work with neurodiverse populations and with specifically with autistic youth here in Quebec. Um, and what I learned, we were creating a pilot project for a group of autistic youth here in Montreal, and I was really, really apprehensive about going into it because I don't have any training in teaching for neurodiverse. I've taught very different audiences for the last 10 plus years, different learners from all walks of life. But I can acknowledge that I didn't have the knowledge of what it takes to adapt to a neurodiverse audience. But I went in with the guidance of the facilitators of that group, and they trusted that we were well prepared to go in. What was amazing was that we gave the Nonflict workshop to this group, and I learned two really, really important lessons that have a huge impact on how we teach everybody. One is that we all need time to look at how self-aware we are. So I was worried about teaching empathy to that group because we know that empathy is felt differently or maybe not at all by neurodiverse individuals. But what was amazing was that they were the first to ask me the question. They said, John, what do we do if we don't feel empathy or feel it in the same way? I thought that was amazing, right? Because I didn't dare bring it up, but they did. And then we were able to have that conversation. Once it was on the table, then we could talk about it in a really open way. But we all have that same problem, right? Whatever that is that makes us us, whether that's a different way of looking at the world or something that makes us uncomfortable, putting it out there is a huge relief and it allows us to work differently with each other. But the second more powerful thing that I learned from that group was that all humans thrive on structure. We like to think that we like flexibility and that we like all these things. We do. But when we have a structured approach in front of us, we feel confident, we feel equipped and prepared. And it may feel robotic at first to go through a three-step process, but the reward that we get at the end of it, seeing change and seeing a different outcome, can be contagious. And so the group that I met really taught me that and taught because they were excited about printing this out and having it so that they could better deal with conflict with their siblings or with their coworkers. But we want the same thing. We may not admit it, or we may think that we're better prepared, but structure helps us, right? And leaning on structure, especially repeatedly leaning on structure in relationships that have not been functioning so far, can truly, truly help us. So, in order to do that, I'm being conscious of time because I want to leave some time for questions as well. Um, so, that 250 million people that we want to transform by 2030, that we want to better equip by 2030, we can't do that one by one. And we can't do that the way we've been doing it so far, which was through webinars like this with, dozens or hundreds or thousands of people at a time. We need to think bigger. And so our partners have tens of millions of youth that they reach every year. And so last year, we launched this e-learning platform with our partners at Engage Learn and Workbay, where we were able to bring this to first to schools across the south of the U.S. and then to the World Scouts movement as of last October, who just alone represent about 65 million young people across the globe. And so they're really excited to get a badge at the end of this, as we know with the Scouts, right? If any of you have ever been a Scout, getting a badge is a badge of honor. It's something that we're proud of. We're proud to be peacemakers, right? I proudly call myself a peacemaker when somebody asks me what I do for work. That's a conversation starter rather than a conversation ender. People want to know what it means and they want to talk to me about the lack of peace that they have in their lives and how they deeply, deeply want to see change. We want to bring that to people all around the world, whether that's in the boardroom, like many of you operate in, um, or in your own lives. The truth is that even when we train corporates, we're really not training the employee, we're training a human. If they can be more peaceful at home, then they can be more peaceful at work and vice versa. And so ultimately, we all want peace. We just sometimes have lost the hope that it can actually happen, whether that's on a board fraught with conflict or at home in a relationship that has not felt right for a while, or at work in a team that just hasn't gelled since the very beginning. Whatever that is, that's not where we want to be. We want to be in a different state, but we don't necessarily know what tools we should use to do the work. And imagine if at a young age we had been given tools to give us a different perspective on conflict and give us a desire to bring peace into our own lives. So that's what we're trying to do with young people around the world. Now, we do that through that e-learning platform, but we also embrace technology. And this is something that hopefully I can demonstrate if we have a few minutes. A few years ago, we had an Amazon engineer who developed a Nonflict skill for Alexa. So for any of you who have Alexa devices and still trust them, first of all, don't trust it. But if you still use it, then you can use it for good, which you can enable the Nonflict coach skill, and the Alexa device can walk you through either the skills so that you can learn them, or help you and a partner go through the steps of Nonflict as an arbitrary third party. And so that was really exciting a few years ago, and we had some great feedback from the use of those devices. Whether you have one of those devices or a smartphone, you can use it. But more exciting was that a few months ago, we partnered with a brilliant mind out of Stanford University named Maddie Boacek, who's a leading figure in uh, debunking deepfake technology and using it, well, first of all, helping us with the challenges of that and using it for good. And we developed a Nonflict GPT, a Nonflict AI, that for any of you who use or have ChatGPT, I will show you how to bring that up. And in any language, you can have a conversation with our Nonflict AI that is now in its seventh version, seventh update, that will walk you through even the most difficult conflicts. And we've seen it. We saw it in a reconciliation village in Rwanda, where someone asked Steve, our founder, the very difficult question of, because in this village, um, uh, survivors of the genocide and perpetrators live side by side and coexist, which is a pretty remarkable story in and of itself that I don't have time to dig into, but really inspired our work. Um, and one of the members of the village asked Steve after one of these workshops, "How can I live side by side with the person who killed members of my family?" And Steve rightfully did not feel prepared to answer that question, but said, you know, I have a powerful tool that understands your conflict or has knowledge of your conflict in a much more profound way than I do. Would you be okay asking it the question in your own language? And so that individual asked our Nonflict AI in Kenya, Rwanda, in their native language, that question. And all of the village members listened to the answer. And they were in tears after listening to it because it had been so empathetic and authentic in its understanding of the issue and of the response, which is the primary work that we've been putting in is how to make it empathetic, which as an aside, if we can teach empathy to robots, then we certainly can teach it to humans. Um, Although sometimes it might be more difficult. But at the end of that session, they asked to print out the response from the AI so that they can put it up on their community center wall and refer to it on a regular basis. So we're seeing incredible, incredible stories coming from the use of this AI as a complement, and I'll be happy to share that with you as well, so that you can bring it into your own lives. So we have a few minutes left. This is a QR code where you can grab a whole bunch of those resources that I talked about that you can bring in and give us feedback about. Has a whole bunch of videos, including Steve and I were just in Madrid where he gave a TED talk about this very work that was just shared on this link tree, but also all of those resources. So depending on how you learn, there is an ebook, an audiobook, a podcast version of it, some videos, certainly a link to the Nonflict AI, and a whole bunch of other things, including my contact information. I'd be glad to be in touch with anybody who wants more information. Um, and if we do have some time, which I think we do, then I can also demonstrate, if it behaves, our Nonflict AI with a conflict that somebody may have from in the room. So using the chat, I would love for you to share your questions and specifically share if you have any conflicts that you would like our Nonflict AI to deal with so that we can demonstrate how it pertains to um, this particular issues. So let me load up the Nonflict AI. So by the way, let me walk you through how to use it. So if you have ChatGPT on your phone, even the free version, then you would go into the GPTs section, which is in the menu function on the left. Um, and you would click on GPTs and explore GPTs. And right in there, you can click on, or you can search for Nonflict, and you will find Nonflict AI by Million Peacemakers. And then you can add it onto you can actually pin it. So I don't know if my phone will show up here, but um, over here, you can see kind of my Nonflict AI right there on the left. And so I click on my Nonflict AI and it kind of looks like that. There we go. And so what we find most rewarding out of this is not just typing into it, but actually speaking to it. So I don't think we have any examples in the chat, but let me use one just for a demo so that you can see what you'd be dealing with. So there's a little bit of a glitch in, which is not our glitch, but from OpenAI because they keep us on our toes. So you have to start, once you're in the Nonflict AI, you have to start a chat by text. So I'm writing, I'm with a group from, um, the Chartered Governance Institute of Canada. And I have some questions. So I type that in and I prompt it. And then after that, I uh, I use the conversational function, which I find really fun. So I'm going to use that with you guys, and hopefully, like I said, it'll behave. Hi, can you tell me your name?
Of course, I'm NonflictAI, here to guide you through conflict resolution using the Nonflict way. It's great to connect with you. What brought up your questions today?
So I'm sitting here with about 60 or so participants from the Chartered Governance Institute of Canada, and I'm sure they have a wide range of conflicts that they deal with. And I'm hoping you can give me an example of one that would be helpful to use Nonflict AI with.
That's a fantastic setting. 60 governance professionals is a rich group for meaningful dialogue. Let's ground this in a common boardroom conflict. Here's one example you could use with Nonflict AI. Imagine a board where the chair and the CEO are clashing. The chair feels the CEO isn't transparent enough and isn't sharing timely updates. The CEO, on the other hand, feels micromanaged and believes the chair is overstepping by getting too involved in day to day operations. This kind of tension is very real, and it affects trust, morale, and decision making. Using the Nonflict way, we'd start with step one: understand yourself and your partner. Let me ask you one of the Nonflict questions. In that example, how do you think each party might feel?
I think those parties might feel disrespected, maybe frustrated to not be able to hear or to be heard by the other.
Yes, absolutely. Disrespected and frustrated are very real and common emotions in these situations. So now, staying with step one of the Nonflict way, here's another Nonflict question. What do you think might be important for each of them? What do they each value that might be driving their behavior?
I think from each of their perspectives, they value their vision of where the organization should be. And maybe that vision is slightly skewed in one direction or another. And there's probably a little bit of ego on each of their parts as well that's informing that.
That's a great insight. Yes, vision and leadership identity can be powerful drivers, especially in governance roles where people deeply care about an organization's future. And you're right, ego often plays a hidden role, especially when people feel their authority, expertise, or purpose is being challenged. Now we'd move into step two: understand your shared reality. This step invites both parties to pause and reflect together. So let's consider one of those Nonflict questions. What is the real underlying conflict here? What do you think is really going on beneath the surface of the chair CEO tension?
I think there's probably a lot of miscommunication there. I don't think they get enough time to just talk about their personal visions. They're probably thrown into conflict situations more than into situations where they're simply aligning on the fact that they're misaligned, right? So they probably have not been given enough opportunities to be able to share their different perspectives, be heard, feel respected, and feel on the same page.
That's beautifully put. You're really capturing the heart of what we see in so many organizational conflicts. What looks like a clash of visions or personalities is often a result of not having space for real conversations. Not about crises, but about alignment, respect, and mutual understanding. From a Nonflict perspective, this highlights.
So I'm going to pause now just to respect everybody's time, but it gives you an idea of how deep you can go with it. Now, we've done everything from lay out a full action plan to go through really, really difficult conflicts. And people are often on the verge of tears, if not in full tears, because often the responses that they're getting from this AI, this artificial being, are often more empathetic than the ones that they've been receiving in their world, right? So we often see our attachment to our technology as detaching us from the real world. But what if there was a reality where our technology actually made us feel closer to the people around us, right? Equipped us in a way. And that's what we're trying to work towards, is that if we can train, like I said, if we can train our AI to be empathetic and to model behavior that we want to bring into the real world, then we can then also have an impact on that real world in a really, really substantial way. So you've been given a bit of a taste of certainly the work that we do, but also of the Nonflict AI tool. I highly encourage you to go and grab it on this link that you have in front of you and to give us feedback. We'd love to hear what kinds of conflicts. I'll just give you another example of actually a really powerful situation that we've had. We have a coach out in Calgary who is also a pediatric doctor. Um, and he has trained in Nonflict and has become a Nonflict coach and brings Nonflict AI into his everyday work. He's given us two instances of nothing short of having saved a life through using this methodology and this tool instead of what he normally did. Briefly, what one of the examples was that there was an irate parent who came in storming to the hospital and was planning to actually physically harm this doctor because he was unhappy with the care or the choices that the doctor was making for the child's care. And normally, this doctor told me that he would have just called security and had this person escorted out and removed from the primary care of the child. And he said, well, what if I looked at things differently? And he used Nonflict AI to actually see the situation from the parent's perspective and understood that the crossover between their actual needs and desires was the care of this child. And he was able to communicate with this parent in a way that not only um, brought down the tension and de-escalated the situation, but actually at the end of it, the father came back the next day, asked the doctor to speak in private, apologized for his behavior, and asked the doctor for a hug at the end of it. He said he had never seen a transformation in 24 hours like that. And it was all because he challenged himself to think differently about the situation and not resort to his previous behaviors and trust that another tool had some options for him. So we're seeing these kinds of stories daily, and it's pretty remarkable to see what technology can bring to us. So back to us. We have 7 minutes. I'd love to hear if anybody has any questions and open it up a little bit. Victoria, I don't know if you saw anything in the chat that you needed to address.
No, not yet. If anybody has any questions, now would be the time to put them in the chat or in the Q&A function. We'll definitely make sure that the recording, I know that was a question at one point, the recording will be available like many of the other CPD sessions about a week after the event on our YouTube channel as well as our website. And we'll also connect with John to make sure those resources that he mentioned are available and everything. It looks like a question just popped up. It says, how does your method differ from interest-based negotiation conflict resolution?
So, like I mentioned at the beginning, none of this is entirely new. It really is a distilled version of a lot of what we see in change management, in nonviolent communication, in negotiation strategy. And so a lot of those elements you'll see reflected in our three-step method. The method is really meant to establish mutual trust, to hear different people's perspectives, to understand how those two coexist or do not currently coexist, and then co-create an ideal reality. And so if you see things that you already recognize, that's good. We've tried to take the best of what's out there and the best of what works and make it accessible, especially to young people around the world, so that they feel like they have a tool that they can resort to that will help them in their everyday life. And with regards to the link that I sent you, I also saw that a bunch of people have already signed up for our workshops. We do a monthly workshop that is free and is a little bit more stretched out, so we have a little bit more time to practice some of these skills. It's about 2 hours, and it'll give you a taste of Nonflict. So I do encourage you to sign up online. No previous experience required, but hopefully you can get a little bit of a more in-depth understanding and take that back as well.
Okay. Lots of people are saying they enjoyed the presentation, but it doesn't look like anybody has more questions, just lots and lots to think about, which I agree with. I found it very informative and very interesting. Oh, Randir would like to get a chance to talk, so you should be able to, Randir, now. You just have to unmute. Maybe. Maybe not.
Um,
Randir is just asking, do you have any micro credentials or anything related to that within the Million Peacemakers?
so I'm not sure what you mean by micro credentials, but if you mean like a badge that we offer or like a certificate, then yes, typically with the groups that we work with, we do issue a certificate that also provides a badge that people can share on their LinkedIn, etc. People of all walks of life tend to be motivated by
Mm,
that, and so we do issue that.
perfect. Okay. Well, if there's no more questions, I'm going to say thank you, Jonathan. I found that very interesting, and it seems like our participants did as well. I think we all have a lot to kind of walk away and think about a little bit more. So thank you to you for presenting that, as well as everybody who attended today. We always enjoy when we have lots of participation. I look forward to seeing you all at our next sponsored webinar, which is managing difficult organizational change. So not too far off. Maybe we can use some of these tactics in that one as well with Asha Burry on July 16th at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern. You can find more information on our CGIC website. As always, please provide your feedback. We love getting it and we love passing it along to our speakers so that they can use it to improve or make it better in the future and everything like that. And the recording and presentation slides will be available next week. So if that's all, I think we have one or two hands still raised. So I'm just going to let them jump in here. Maybe. Oh, they just disappeared. So maybe never mind. Okay. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining.
Thanks, everyone.